Dragons cover the lands and taverns are filled with heroes. Everywhere we go, there are magical ingredients right for the picking, just so we can make a fine meal for the king who will be here in a short few days. This is Taverns and Dragons. Thank you for coming back to Game Brigade. My name is Brian. This is a review for Taverns and Dragons, going to be on Kickstarter by Lord Raccoon Games. Thank you for joining us. Let's begin and talk about the mechanics of this game, and then we'll talk about what I liked and didn't like and give you my final thoughts with a score here at the end. This is a game where you're going to be rolling dice, assigning them to locations to move along the track. This is kind of a racetrack, is kind of how I imagined it. It is a one-way street, but there are shortcuts along the way. There are different locations that players can stop at to collect either resources or visit the taverns that you can find along the way, collecting different types of items or skills and advantages that you can gain. This game, from a high level, when I first originally played it, gave me the impression of a game that was really geared towards a younger audience, preteens or young adults. But I have found at a deeper level that there is more nuance and strategy in this game, but it's there if you would like to find it. So we will talk about that more in detail. Let's cover the core mechanics so you have an idea of how this game works, and then we'll talk about what I liked. In this game, players are going to be taking their 5 dice and rolling them. These dice will then have different types of skill or numbers that are showing up from 1 to 4. And these are very important because they're going to be assigning different types of skills or actions that you can complete. There are 2 locations currently on the board that you can take that do not deal with your meeples. We'll talk about those first. The first one is up here. It is the bank, or collecting money, I guess you would say. There are specific numbers that require you to place a specific dice on that number, so you have to make sure you roll the proper dice, and then you'll collect the resource below it, which is 2 gold or 3 gold or 1 gold, whatever it may be. The other location is over here, which is basically whatever is the number on the dice face that you place will result in the amount of crystals you collect. So this one, I placed a 3, I would collect 3 crystals. Other than that, you have the other dice, which will be assigned to your meeples. We have 3 different types of meeples. They each do something a little different, with one basically doing not a whole lot. We have the Shovel Man. Now, Shovels, he doesn't do much. He moves normally, and he only collects 2 different items. So if we were to give him 2 movement, we'd move along 2, and we were able to collect a resource, here being a mushroom, and then we could visit this blacksmith and paying whatever cost. Now, you'll notice that there are 2 different costs here on the blacksmith. In a 3 and 4 player game, you can access either one, paying the resource cost. Once it's paid, you'll place your resource on it to indicate that that has been purchased, and that is no longer available until the end of the round. Other players can sit here and use the item as well, but they'd have to pay the additional cost to get that reward. So there is a speed advantage to wanting to go faster than everyone else, but there's also trying to stay back and get as many of the resources as possible to help you further along your journey. The next person we have is Boots. I call Boots because Boots likes to run fast. He gets +1 movement to his dice. So if I place a 3, he'd go 1, 2, 3, and 4. He always gets +1 to the dice, so there's no negating that. And in this game, whatever you roll on the face, you must do that movement. So it's not up to, it is that movement. So 2 or 3 or 4, that is the amount. And originally when I played this game, I thought that I was doing poorly when I was rolling low, but it's actually pretty balanced in terms of where you can move and the amount, because the higher dice means they're kind of restricting in terms of what you're able to do and move in terms of movement. The next one is our Bagman. Bagman is special because he can carry an additional item. So instead of 2 items, he can carry 4. So he would take this item, and you'll be placing them in their special slots on your player board. Each of the basic 2 guys, Boots and Shovels, can carry 2 items, while Bagman can carry 3. But what happens if we fill out all of our items? Well, that's an important part, because now we've got our ingredients to cook our special food that's going to be required to feed the king. We must return with all our items, rolling the dice back to the city gates, where we can then leave our food and then use them for ingredients. Now, there are specific types of ingredients here that are more rare than the others, so those are going to be more higher in demand. The rarest being meat. And how do you collect meat? Well, the only way is to defeat the dragon. The dragon will come out on a specific turn. If you notice here on the top of the track, there are indicators here that say what things will happen at the end or beginning of a round. At the beginning of round 2, the first dragon will come out. And there will be an indicator sign up here in the top right corner showing where he will be placed. You place him in the specific location. If he has a come into play effect, you will trigger that then. And now you're able to combat the dragon and fight him. Now, this is important because these will deal with a different set of dice. Let's say I am now going to engage the dragon. The dice that we're rolling are these 3 black dice, and they have different faces, swords, axes, bows and arrows, a flame, and a scratch. These are important because to roll these dice, you have to spend these crystals. You don't just get to automatically roll these 3 dice. You have to spend up to 3. So if I choose to spend these 3 crystals that I gathered earlier, now I can roll them and deal some damage. So I dealt 2 swords and a crossbow. We then will refer to the top of the dragon here, and we look, where can we deal damage? Well, looks like we can deal a sword damage here, a crossbow damage here, which will defeat him in this line, getting me a piece of food. So we'll place it here on our guy, and 2 victory points going up to here. Well, we have another sword to place. If I had another gem, we place that gem somewhere. I could place it right here and deal damage. The dragon will stay in play until all of the available spots are defeated. Very similar to games like Lords of Ragnarok, Lords of Hellas, where you're going to be fighting these monsters. They have different body parts that you're going to be defeating. And then once the monster, the dragon, is fully defeated, then he is removed from the board. And victory points will be given to the player who slain him. It's a variable victory point. There's a token you will draw. It's between like 2 and 4 points for that defeat. Could be more. I've only gone based on what I've seen. There is benefits then with the dragon where you're going to want to go early to get the meat because you need that to cook because it's extremely rare, but you're also wanting to be late and do the final hit because then you can get those free victory points for defeating him. So there is an interesting play there. So with that, players are going to keep doing this motion of going around, activating the different taverns, collecting the resources, returning their items, dropping them off here at the inn, where you're going to then turn all your items in at a time to do a recipe. For example, this recipe requires a flour, a mushroom, a dragon egg, and a ham, and that is now worth 17 points. At the end of the 7th round, the king will arrive, and the player with the most points will be declared the victor. Now, there are things that can augment this system. Like I said, the base game is pretty dry, but there are some things that kind of make this more interesting, giving it a little bit more value. That's I want to make sure I highlight it. First off, up top, we have these heroes. The heroes are recruitable, basically tableau building, which gives you a chance to customize your play and giving you some more strategies or advantages. In the original game, there was a prototype that launched about 9 months to a year ago for Taverns and Dragons, and there was a lot more take that mechanics in these heroes where you would actually remove dice from your opponents, which is very harmful because now if you go from 5 to 4 dice, it is effectively reducing a turn for your opponents, which is very, very damaging. So instead of having those take that mechanics, I've gone through this entire deck. I have not seen anything that reflects take that at all. So that's great. Now, I don't know, obviously, what will be in the final design of this Kickstarter project. Hopefully they haven't included those in a back end where I don't know about. But from what I've seen, everything relates to either augmenting your dice or collecting additional resources or removing your own dice so that you can reactivate your meeples again, which is great. So basically augmenting your gameplay area. These guys also have victory point conditions based on them, so you can collect victory points from them. And then you have additional items that they can provide a one-time use to get either like a sword item or get you some rare materials for these cooking recipes. There are also several different modular expansions. Like I said, this is a prototype, so I haven't seen everything. But what I have seen, we have variable endgame scoring victory points. We have this cheeky goblin, which you can buy items from him, and those things do different things. We have events that can occur. At the top of this track, we have these upside down and right side up horseshoes. Basically, at the end of each round, you flip over a event, and you will read based on what the icon here says. You will do what the card tells you to do, either positive or negative events. And then we have quests that you can go on, where you can send your meeples out on quests and do different types of items and objectives, which is fun. And I think it adds a lot more variety and asymmetrical goodness to the base game of Taverns and Dragons. So let's talk about what I liked. Overall, this, as I said, was a very interesting kind of base level, family level gameplay experience, but it did have some of that nuanced gameplay experience that I thought was really interesting for me to enjoy, especially because the dice, as you get to kind of tight situations where you're having to go to specific locations, it becomes interesting puzzle in terms of how do I want to play your dice? How do I want to use my cards effectively to get to exactly what I need? You know, if I'm like, well, I want to get maximum points up here, which I might want to do this, increase all my dice by 1, but then does that affect my guys down the line when I'm trying to run? Do I have the right amount of movement to get where I need to go? So there is a little bit of an interesting puzzle within that. It's still very family friendly. So if I were to give this a weight scale based on the Board Game Geek weight system, it would be a 2.0 to maybe like a 2.3. So still very family friendly introduction level game, which doesn't mean it's a bad thing. I just want to make sure I am upfront and letting people know where I found the skill ceiling to be with this product. But it was pretty fun in terms of the challenging. I like the aspect of rolling the dice, just like when I played other games in the Lords of Ragnarok, rolling the dice, trying to push your luck, trying to get as much damage up here, visiting the blacksmith, getting more tokens to try to complete more of the dragon defeating. It was fun. I enjoyed that aspect. It also was very flavorful as we're coming around, collecting resources, coming back, looking to see what we can collect, because each round these foods kind of slide down and a new one gets replaced. So maybe one that you were kind of banking on purchasing, it might slide off and go away and get replaced by a new one when it pushes down the track. So it's kind of a fun little puzzle as you're trying to get your guys back, especially if you've got your guy here and he's ready to go and you're rolling only high dice. You're like, well, shoot, how am I going to get my guy back? So you have to make sure you're counting the spots. So like right here, if I had 5, I could be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, that doesn't do it. Well, luckily there's a shortcut right here. I can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I can, basically run in a circle to get my guy to drop off his dice. So there is an interesting puzzle in terms of getting around to where you need to go, figuring out those things. I very much enjoyed it. But what did I not like, or what could I see other people maybe not liking in this type of game? It was mostly the aspect of how light it felt in terms of what I was doing at times felt like it was the only option I could do. You play your dice. There was sometimes where like, well, these are the most obvious options and I have to do it. There's no other agency for me. I wish there were more locations on the board that I could place dice. Currently, as I said, there are only 2 different locations. You have this gem generating crystal spot and you've got the money one. I wish that there was a spot that I could place somewhere else that I didn't have to maybe move my minions every time. Maybe a location that I could reduce the cost of my tavern purchasing a hero, but now I have to buy a hero, something like that. I don't know. There could be something down the line. They do have these spots that kind of are interesting that you can stop to, but those are, again, stopping with your meeples, and they weren't as exciting, but I do think that's interesting that they're trying to come up with some different ideas on what you can do. The other thing that really, really drove me nuts, the dragon in the top right has a location where you can spawn, you're supposed to spawn the minion or the monsters, but they're not very clear in terms of where they want you to spawn it. This one says mushrooms. Well, you've got mushrooms here, but these are 3. They look like a bunch there. But these are a bunch, but they're super small. So does the dragon go here? Does he go here? Am I missing something? I feel like there needs to be more clarity in terms of where the dragons are going to go, because at times it was super frustrating. There was one that has a waterfall, and there's nowhere. We're like, well, the waterfall's here. Does he go one of these two spaces? We couldn't figure it out. So we just had to basically make our best guess, place a judgment. Sometimes we're like, whatever, he's just going to go here, and we'll have to, play with him as if that's his spawn. That is not a fun experience, though, for new players. So I want to make sure that is not the baseline experience. The other thing I would make sure I noted is the spaces at times are really clutterly and small. Again, I don't know what these meeples are going to look like, if they're going to be shaped in the form of the actual shape is what I'm assuming. But in a game where you could have potentially up to 4 players, you have to spawn all your guys here in the middle, and it just becomes a cluster. It's just so many guys here, as well as this track here that shows your scoring track. You have these little discs that you send them down. It is just too small, too cluttered for you to really enjoy it. Things are getting knocked around, especially when you got people chucking dice like this. You can hit things. So I would rather have a little bit more space. I do appreciate that they have spots at the top of the board for the heroes. They have a spot here on the side of the board for the recipes. It's great, but we have some dead space in some of the areas of the map. Here I am just making a huge freaking mess. So I don't know, maybe there's something that could be done there. Probably won't happen, but it was something that frustrated us in our plays. Overall, though, I enjoyed my plays of Taverns of Dragon. My final score for this one would be a 3.5. It's a good game. I enjoyed it for what it is. Would I pull this out in a standard play session with my standard group? Most likely not. It would be a game we play 1 or 2 times and probably will be shelved for another year or so before we decide to pull it out. I would not be requesting it myself with my standard group. Now, the caveat with that, though, is if I was playing with a younger audience, if I'm playing with my daughter and her friends, there would be situations where I think this could get a lot more play. I think that would be a great aspect for where I'd place this. So very much family friendly in terms of the art and the enjoyment. That's where I would market this. So hopefully that helped you guys in making your decision with backing this game. I would love to know what you guys think. Leave a comment down in the comment section down below. If you want to support us, we have a few links down there. We have the Patreon as well as the Discord. Join us and have some conversation. We'd love to talk with you guys. Otherwise, smash that like button. Let me know what you think. I will talk to you very soon. Bye-bye.